which I have them here on my notes so that I don't speak out of out of line, of what am expected to engage. So now, so as we begin, I would usually start from the point of something that has become more like a mantra for me, and that is something that have become have become more like an evangelist of, and that is the fact that we need to begin to learn to um, connect the dots between times and seasons. And so, if we do that, we would see some of the things that started to happen at the beginning of the year towards the financial lines. It was not just a Nigerian thing, it was a global thing. That's when the CBDC became a serious thing that people started talking about. Fear of economic collapse. I said Naira, currencies were being devalued all around the world, which also affected the Naira. The CBN governor of Nigeria also started pulling some stunts that really affected the financial health of the people in Nigeria. Okay, so it's important to begin to see things along those lines. Now, that's the first third of the year. So that's from January to April. Now, from May to like August, which is the second third of the year, and we began to see certain governmental seats. So, for example, the coronation of the King of England, the swearing of the supposed president of Nigeria, and Russia was raising its heads, a lot of things happening in France, in Canada, and it appears that people are really beginning to question the government and the government of the day as to maybe displeasures or inconsistencies. Now, some of these things we also need to not just see them as events, but begin to see how it connects to other things, especially the months before, which was the finance shaking. I usually call this finance shaking. And in this second third of the year, I called them the governmental shaking. So nations around the world will experience governmental tensions, which we're already seeing some part of that. The other part, which we already seen a clue of it across certain nations around the world, from the east to the west, which is going to be the third of the year. So that's from September to December. It's going to be territorial tensions. So a lot of things will have to do with land and properties and real estate. And it looks like it came a bit early with some of the things that is happening in Hawaii at the moment, where there was a devastating inflagration. The fire consumed a lot of those places. And now we see that after everything seems to have been destroyed, certain real estate agents or real estate corporations are now beginning to try to buy off those lands from the original inhabitants. Okay, so these are sneak peeks to what what might ensue in the coming third of the year. So it's important. That's why I usually did mention that one of the things that would help you to as a tool in the last quarter, last third of the year is real estate. You must have a leg in real estate of some sort. Either you own a property, you own investments in real estate, you have land. There must be some form of asset, even if it's something that was passed down hereditary. Maybe your father had a land and now they've passed on or something, or you're now the one in charge of that. There must be a leg that you have, which is now founded upon land, real estate, in such a way that you can use it as a bargaining chip. It usually did look like something that has the propensity to save people from, in quotes or quote and unquote, sudden poverty. Okay, so there might be some things that would ensue creating some form of sudden poverty in the land. And so real estate or access to land is going to be something powerful that I believe that you should not even um, joke with. Now, let's go into the core financial decisions that we're taking a look at. So, for example, like I started with the introduction, we need to begin to look back and say that with everything that happened in the first third of the year, with the financial tensions and shakings, what did you learn from it? If you did not learn anything, so that means by learning is not just learning by awareness, it's by learning by deeds. So that means that what are the things that you've put in place that helps you to mitigate something like that happening again. So that means that what would happen if another situation happens where there is a cash crunch, where or people do not have access to their money anymore, would you still suffer the same fate as the time before? So these are some of the things that you need to begin to look at and see if you actually did learn your lesson from what happened there. The core thing you need to understand here is that savings is overrated. It was in the industrial age that savings was a big thing. Savings was a good thing. Saving was a profitable thing. In this time and climb, sorry, savings is not that significant. It doesn't hold so much water in the current scheme of things. Now, that doesn't mean that you should not save or have some money you put aside for the purpose of saving. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that savings should not be the only thing you depend upon to create wealth for you. Because there are many people who work, they work tremendously hard, but in their minds, they're putting money aside in savings, hoping and believing that that's what will actually take them into wealth. That is a wrong mindset for this day and age. You must think beyond savings. A lot of people are actually running towards investment. Yes, investment in the general sense is one of the things that would allow you to build a hedge against drought or poverty. But now it now has to do with the kind of investment, the kind of assets, the kind of stock, the kind of materials and commodities you need to actually begin to think and ponder about. All of these are also very important and key. So that means that you have to do your due diligence. You cannot just go into something because every other person seems to be doing that. That is not a very wise investment decision, especially in this time. So the first thing I mentioned is that savings is overrated. Savings is no longer the tool that is bound to take you out of poverty or something that would bring you into wealth. It also begs the question that even though savings is no longer as secure as we think it is, global finance itself is no longer secure. Okay, and it's so because of the lack of security of global finance, it is now coming down into every other part, which now affects savings and the propensity of our investment, you know, and every other thing that we have along those lines. So that means two things now: savings is overrated, and global finance is no longer as secure. You know, it's kind of like you had an antivirus that did very well last year. But because an antivirus protected your system very well last year, it's not a sign that it's going to do the same this year. Because there might be a more advanced kind of virus that might hit your system, and that antivirus might not have enough shield, to save your system. So that is how I need you to look at it. It's not that invest savings is no longer good or global finance, people are still not making money from it. It just means that if a real threat comes, a threat that is commensurate with the times and the technological advancement that we have at this moment, many of those things will not be able to stand. Okay, so that's very key. In 2022, geopolitics was something that a lot of people, the people who were really thinking about the times and the seasons, looked at because that's where a lot of shakings and readjustments were happening at a geopolitical scale. In this time, geoeconomics is something that people now begin to need to look into because how the economics of the world, the economics around the globe, how a lot of things are failing, a lot of things are ineffective, a lot of things are no longer working the way they have been promised to work. If you read the strategic report of that tells you how the state of things is going to be up until 2050, you will notice that many of those things have actually changed, and it's no longer the way many of these things were postulated. What that means now is that as we are currently seeing, it is expected that there will be, due to the geoeconomic system, there would be financial allegiances. So that means that certain nations will now begin to move or pivot towards certain financial interests. Now, geopolitics has more to do with political interest, but geoeconomics has a lot to do with economic and financial interest. And we're already seeing some of these things already. The whole issue with France and some of the francophone African countries, there's a disparity coming in, and there's almost like a severance, an age-long colonial severance. That many of the French-speaking countries now do not want anything to do with France. They're not taking their oars back to France. They no longer want to spend the franc, and so a huge destabilization is coming on the way. And these are geo-economic tides that we also need to begin to ponder on and see where it's going so that we can make more informed decisions, especially when it comes to our finances. So I mentioned that we have financial allegiances and financial splittings, which are as a result of geoeconomics. Um, Another important thing which you also need to notice in the last 50 years, money always moved to the West. Why? Because the US dollar was the global hedge of finance. So if you're in the IMF or you're in the World Bank, everything was speaking the language of the dollar. Everything was hedged against the dollar. The dollar became the global reserve currency. But now, because of the weakness of the dollar, a lot of organizations and countries are beginning to tread with caution, okay, especially to see if there will still be or there is still a future when it comes to trading, owning, or having United States dollar. And that's where countries like the amalgamations of the BRICS have come into place. And it's already challenging the dollar, giving it a run for its money. So what that means is that we need to begin to see how gradually, almost infinitesimally, the global finance, global money, in quote, is moving eastward. What that means is that a lot of countries in the East, especially that have allegiances with BRICS, will begin to grow powerfully. Okay, so um, two of the most notable countries at the moment will be Russia and China. UAE also, the Caliphate states, also hold much promise because they are futuristic in the sense that they are creating an environment that is future compliant. So you see that it's more like a global tourist attraction point, and they're doing that intentionally because they really do not have much resources. However, innovation is their national resource, and they're using that to draw people because they know that the more people continue to flock into that, people would always move with money. Okay, and so that's very key and is something worthy of note. So begin to look at it. A lot of organizations that used to have their headquarters in the UK and the United States are now moving to the UAE, in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi, and because those countries are making it easy. There's an ease of business, things like taxation, control, no little or no taxes, and documentations have become a lot easier. So we'll begin to see gradual, steady movement of franchises and headquarters, global headquarters moving from the west will be moving more towards the east. So that means that as money begins to move towards the east, there's a very high chance that the currency of trade globally would begin to take another form. So that's very key. When it comes to financial decisions, again, many of the things I would say are not new things. They're things that you probably, if you've been listening to me for a while, you must have heard me talk about it at one time or the other. So there are the three T's that I mentioned. The first is taxation, the second is tokenization, and the third is trading upwards. I'm going to also briefly talk about them so that, and the goal of this, and you know that repetition actually does help sometimes. It helps to borrow in, certain things that people might not have been either privy to or become fully aware of. Especially when you know that if you fail to make decisions in this time and season, there is a very high chance that you become a casualty of the system. That's mostly bound to happen. Okay, and so you cannot sit on the edge at this time. Every decision you make from now is very important, especially when we get into September, October, November, and December. The first thing is taxation. Taxation has been one of the foremost means of wealth control and wealth transfer globally. A lot of giant organizations actually engage with this. And one of the most giant organizations is the government. Taxation is one of the things that keeps the government rich, that keeps the government having money, and keeps a lot of systems dependent on the government. And now taxations have become highly pronounced and almost to the detriment of the people. And so you cannot afford to be paying taxes all your life without getting returns on taxation. And one of the ways to do this is to create systems that allows you to also earn taxable income. I call it taxable income, it's just a fanciful word. It means that you must create some form of structure that allows, what's the word now, people to periodically um, pay pay into your account, or transfer money through maybe a subscription business model. I'm going to say this now, especially for people who think they have job securities in their 9 to 5s. It's important that beyond your 9 to 5, you must have another source of income. And I would prefer that you begin to test and see how using taxation as a tool in business can work in your advantage. So, this is what it means. When you do business, one, move towards community line, move towards periodic servicing. So, it's not that a one time only kind of thing. No, do it in such a way that now, time and time again, money always moves in your direction. And that's one of the things that taxation actually does help with. Now, the thing about taxation where you are not in the receiving end or the giving end of taxation is that you are if you have money in your account, if money stays long in your account, you pay tax. If money leaves your account, you pay tax. If money comes in your account, you pay tax. So for everything, money is always leaving your account no matter the decision. And so the better decision for you to do is to find out ways in which the rate at which money is leaving your account is not as much, or is a bit more controlled, and that is by the rate at which money is coming into your account. So many of the things I would advise people is that you have to really understand your financial systems. And one of the ways to do that is go through your financial statements of account and see how much your account has bled on taxes, whether it's ATM card levy taxes, interest, transaction taxes, so money comes in, credit tax, debit tax, savings tax, maintenance levy taxes, all of these taxes. Look at how much the government or the financial systems have taken out of your account in the name of tax. Look at it for the last 6 months. You will be shocked at how much you've actually bled. Now, imagine if your account is in such a way that money is not coming into it. It means you are losing big time. And so that is why, even if there is almost nothing we can do about governmental taxing system, make sure that you are also taxing people one way or the other. Okay, it's not the religious people might look at it and say, no, you shouldn't do this. I'm sorry, if you want to be religious, you can stay in church. But in the flow of times and seasons, you have to understand the harmful effect of not making any financial decisions, especially when it comes to taxation and how tax affects you. Okay, so that's key. You must find a means in which you're doing goods or services in which money continuously comes to you, either being a consultant, either being a tutor of some sort, just something that periodically brings money to you. So that's about taxation, which helps with your finances. The second one is tokenization. Tokenization is actually a business model that is innovative and allows you to function in the digital world, in the virtual world. Now, the goal of tokenization is actually to have a kind of, I'll call it a macro currency in such a way that there is obviously the general acceptable currency of trade, but within your community, there is a macro currency. This has a lot of life in the gaming world. So you see things like gaming tokens where you need to have certain coins to buy some things. That's how it starts. Now you have to move it from gaming and entertainment and bring it into business. It's one of the reasons that many of the entertainment platforms or platforms are making a lot of money on tokenization. And tokenization doesn't come by just saying, "Oh, let me start having tokens." It has to be backed by research. What's the psychographic analysis of your business? You need to understand that because the token you're going to create has to be something that will bring value to the people within your community and within your system. Okay, so it might mean that you might need to do a bit of education or learning with regards to tokenization and how you can bring that into your business model. Now that the world is might begin to open the doors briefly on cryptocurrencies or blockchain technology, tokenization is actually going to become a bit more secure and it will ride upon that security and then become a bit more globally acceptable venture. I would say this: there are certain systems that already use some form of tokenization. Areas like China, for example, is quite heavy on tokenization. If you enter the communist system of China, how they monitor people and how they affect the financial climate of the people in China, how they give them scores. Okay, so those scores might be like tokens because you use it to determine how much money you have control over, how much money comes to you, and what have you. So I'm saying this because these are some things you might want to study. See how obviously everything has its pros and cons, so it's good to look at that as well and see how you can make it play in your own business, no matter what you do. So we've talked about taxation, we've talked about tokenization. The third is trading upwards. Trading upward has more to do with your power of negotiation and your power of relationship, strategic relationship management. And I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. In the season we're going into, once we cross into September, going into 2024, it will become a bit more pronounced that relationships will be more valuable than money. So it means that in all your working, in all your getting, I implore you and beseech you that you actually work towards building relationship upwards. What that means is that the closer you are to the corridor of power, to captains of industry, to the place of political control and influence, the better for you. Because that is one of the easiest points or easiest means of gaining access to authority. And you have no idea the amazing things you can do when you have authority. Okay, so you must learn to trade up. Look at you at the current moment. Where do you see yourself in the next 6 months? How are you working towards it? What kind of life, what kind of people, what kind of access do you want to have? The issue is that a lot of us have not snapped out of that mentality that has been sold to us, and it's quite weird because we don't even think about it. Our heads are always down. We're looking at our work. So you go to school, you come out with good grades, you start work, you get married, and then all of your money, all of your investment, all of your energy, once you start having children, gets pumped into that you hardly even have a life anymore. So it's kind of you get to a point where you are at the height of your strength and all of that, and then it's invested upon a family system that totally sucks you out of any form of ascension, financially, or in the place of authority. You need to begin to look at this and find a way to snap out of that system. You must, or maybe you should, or it's important for you to begin to think in terms of authority. And I say this for the members of the seven bulbs. The three important decisions you must make in this season. The most important, obviously, spiritual decisions. The next important after spiritual decision is financial decisions. And after financial decisions is political decision. So that means that you must begin to look at everything you're doing in your life, with your marriage, with your work, with your religious organizations, extra curriculum, humanitarian projects. How are they affecting or how are they informing your spiritual decision, financial decisions, political decisions? So, give an example. You want to get married. Will marriage improve your financial status, or it will reduce your financial status? What that means is that maybe someone who is well to do, maybe middle class, doing well, and gets married. And over the next 6 months, the person realizes that because of the person they have gotten married to, a lot of stress comes, a lot of money goes into other things they didn't plan before, and then they don't have that aspiration anymore because they are now working to sustain something. That is not the best of decisions. Now, I'm not saying that you have to become a gold digger. I'm saying that you have to become more intentional about your relationships, about the life decisions you make, especially how it affects your financial decisions, spiritual decisions, and then political decisions. Now, for political decisions, the kind of work you do, how much authority does it allow you to have? This is the reason why I'm saying this is a lot of as we go into a new season and the disruptions continue, there might be job losses. So a lot of people who had hopes in certain companies might lose their jobs. So if you have not worked on building your own spirituality, finance, and political acumen, you really have nothing to fall back to. And so it's very important that you take some of these things serious. And that's where trading upward means. It's not about being a parasite. It's about knowing that before you attract people who are valuable, you must first be a person of value. So, what value are you bringing to yourself? How are you growing spiritually? How are you growing financially? How are you growing politically? Have you read any books in the last 6 months? Have you been coached in those areas in the last 5 months? What exactly are you doing about building and improving your fortitude in those particular areas? So, these are things that you actually need to begin to ponder and look towards. So, I'm just looking at my notes. I said relationship is far more important than money. By money, I mean cash. Yes, this is important. As we go towards this into the last third of the year, territory is going to be key. And I would say this: a lot of people who traveled out in the Japa syndrome and did not do it intentionally. What do I mean by that? You know that there are people who traveled and they still have family here back at home. You know, they can always come back for vacation or the holidays and all of that. But there are some people that as they've traveled, they have no hopes of coming back because they are coming back will make their going back very difficult. So those people have almost burnt the bridge. And what that means is that when a lot of tension comes in those foreign countries, no matter how well you do in a foreign land, you are still not indigent. Okay, you're not a native of that land. And so when like what happened in Ukraine, when people started running helter and skelter, priority was first to the citizens of Ukraine before foreign students, and all of that. And it's going to be the same thing. And so you must make sure that territory, land, home, you do not completely burn the bridge. I'm speaking especially for some people here who might not be currently in the country. I'm going to read it the way I wrote it so that you'd understand what I'm trying to say. Say, seek a good land if you can't make your land good. Seek a good land if you cannot make your land good. And let me go scriptural on you. You know that Israel had the covenant of God. Israel, that's Jacob, who became Israel. And after a while, there was famine in the land. The guy didn't say that, oh, because God has given me a covenant, and then I would, the world is going to work, and all of those charismatic jargons. The guy, when famine began to hit everybody, he jackpot to Egypt because that's where there was food. Everybody was coming to Egypt because Egypt was a good land. So what I'm saying is find a good land. If it is difficult to make your land good. Now, no matter how you interpret that, that is not a license to live. Because I can tell you this before 2030, many people who have left Africa for greener pastures will come back. So you can quote me on that anywhere. So it's not to live to never return. Just like with Jacob, he said when he dies, they have to take his bones and his corpse and everything back to his land. So he understands that being in Egypt, even though it was for about 430 years, if I'm right, it was just for a season. He was still going to go back. So my point here is in the season you are at, when you're looking at your financial decisions, or your spiritual decisions, your political decisions, everything is bound upon the land in which you are operating on. And so make sure that the land you're operating, you're staying, um, energizes those part of you, makes it easy for you to live to your fullest potential. Okay, either you want to see that land as a physical land or a virtual land. So a virtual land could be like you are working remotely. So that means that even though you are not physically in Canada, you are earning the Canadian dollar. Maybe you are not physically in the UK, but because you're remote working in the UK, you earn in pounds. Maybe you're in somewhere in Kenya, but you work in the United States. You earn in dollars, even though you're in Kenya. So the point is, interpret this land thing not always physically, but strategically. You must put your leg in good land. So there are certain places the economy of the world will begin to move towards. Those are the good lands. So begin to find business opportunities, begin to find collaborative opportunities, begin to find any kind of opportunities in those spaces so that the goodness of that land, no matter where you are on the surface of the earth, it can always find your way, towards you. So that's very important to note. And I also am getting towards the end of this before I ask for questions. Always look for the hedge. Something a lot of people do not understand is that for money to change, right, the hedge must change. By hedge, I mean that what like a reserve. So the first time we had the floating system, you know, money that was when money started to be backed by the United States dollar. At the time, one of the major hedges or reserves of money was gold. At the time, it was land. So you need to know that as the hedge of money or currency begins to shift, the state of finance or currency would also evolve. Now we're in that season where we are seeing an evolution of what money is. In the next 3 to 5 years, our concept of money is going to totally change. Yes, money will be digital, but it it would have so much affected our concept of culture that it's difficult to put into words. Okay, it's just something to anticipate and look forward to. So always look for the hedge. But one of the things I can say is that one of the points of hedge of control of finance or money in the coming times is going to be two things. One is culture, neo culture, and the other is health. How do I put it? Yeah, it's health, but it has to do with the human life. So that means that one of the wealthiest um, areas in the future is going to be the pharmaco sector. Anything that does has to do with health. Find the value chain. So what I'm saying is find the value chain of health and wellness. Find the value chain of health and wellness and see whatever business you can do to have a leg into it. Whether it's as a therapist, whether you have product or services, because a lot of money is going to come into that. So two things you need to look at in which the hedge is going to come. One is culture, new culture, because after a time, people will not be able to trade until they assume a certain cultural identity. So that's very key. And I speak in parables. And then the other part is health. And 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 that would happen when there is a breakthrough in medicine. So look out for that year. It's going to be before 2027, where there will be a massive breakthrough in the medical line. That breakthrough will change the culture of finance and affect politics in a way. And then, so that's just heads up for some of us. The final things I would mention here, when you're looking at where to, how your financial decisions should be tuned towards. Number one, you must look. It's going to population is going to be key. Many political powers of the world are already having a dying population. So that means that their political power is a ticking bomb. It's going to die very soon. And so, where is the next global power going to look like? These are the three things I have the clearance to share with us now. So, the first thing is that the population that is younger will own the future. That means that when you're, so I'm talking about territories now. Even if you're seeking to move to a territory, move to a territory that has an averagely young population. That is by age. Okay, that is very key because a young generation, a young population, the population that is younger will own the future. That's number one. The second thing is that a population with the most energy, the most energetic population, will become the economic capital of the new world. A population that has, so being young does not necessarily translate to having the most energy. So that's why that classification needed to be done. So the youngest population owns the future. The most energetic population becomes the economic capital. And finally, the most creative population will own the political power. So there are three things here: owning the future by use, um, owning the economic capital by the population that has the most energy, and then the most creative population will own political power. And so begin to see it in the lines of your spiritual decisions, financial decisions, and political decisions. Okay. Uh, yes, I think those are some of the things that I have here. At this point, if anyone's got questions, um, the floor is open for us. In about 5 minutes or so, we should be done. So if anyone has questions, you can ask. If not, I would give my conclusion and then we'll call it a day. So I'm looking at um, the people here. So does anyone have questions? I'll give us about 20 seconds if there are no questions, and then we'd have our conclusion. So with this, you have to, so if you can't speak, you can always use the chat section and I would read them out. But what this means is that number one, data is very important, your financial data. If there's anybody here and you don't have financial data of how you are spending, you are not of this world. You are not of this generation. You are of the ancient generation. Because many of the financial decisions you need to make should be backed by data. How much more should you earn? How much more should you save? How much more should you invest? All of these questions must be backed by data. And so, if you are at this point and you are still not intentionally budgeting in such a way that your whatever budgeting app you have can create a report for you to see how you're spending, your prognosis and trends, you're not ready to have financial control in this season. So that's very so budgeting is like the first step. So if you're not there yet, you can even think about making some important financial decisions. And what that means in plain terms is that for someone who at this stage and age is not intentional about budgeting, it shows that there will be other areas of your life that you will lack the necessary discipline of mastery. And it also means that you would naturally be at the financial control of others who are intentional about data and such discipline. Okay, so it's important for everyone to begin to um, know that they're the masters of their own fate. They are the CEOs of their life. They make the decision on how their life would be, and it depends on the options you put on the table. Based on certain financial decisions, you do not have a lot of options on the table, and so you must begin to think in terms of options because that's where political decision comes. You must have several options on the table and then check them vis-a-vis its pros and cons and the state you are in and the state your future hopes to be, and then you can then make a more informed informed decision. Okay. So it appears that we do not have any questions, and so I'm going to give a conclusion. And here is the conclusion based of everything that I've said so far. Mm, Whatever you do, have influence. Have influence. Influence is going to be one of your quickest ways to wealth. Influence. Now, social media has become a major tool. Let me say this. In the 2020s, when we had the dot-com boom, technology was the tool that made a lot of people wealthy and rich. In this age, social media is the tool that's making a lot of people rich. And that's because one, they understand the importance of strategic placements and positioning. And social media is what does this for a lot of people. Now, I'm not saying that. So I'll say it this way: many people who are wealthy and do not leverage on social media in this age, what they have is old money. It's old money. The money they've been able to hold the money well, but it's the money of the old age. So from 2020 upward. But when you're talking about the new money, it's social media, innovation, creativity. That's the tool that makes a lot of people. So look at many of the. That's when the fintech apps, fintech and everything started becoming an app. That is media. Media is a platform on which information is captured, shared, and distributed. That's media. And so you need to understand that you cannot say you are shy. Oh, I'm camera shy. Oh, I don't like my voice. I'm not cutting for all those social media things for the Gen Zs and the young generation. You will be leaving a lot of money on the table. And so it is important to look at this vis-a-vis political decisions and see how much. Now, the thing is, you don't have to be the one to do it. You can always get someone to do it for you. But make sure that the system you have created for yourself actually leverages on the innovation of the age that has the propensity to help you capture money and get money for your use. It's like you can automate money with social media. That's what it does for you. And so, yes, there are people can come through the entertainment line of social media. People can come through the education line of social media. People can come through the authority line of social media, but it does not take the fact away that social media has become a tool for people to create wealth and to generate wealth. And so it's something you can also read about um, and and um, and find how you can impute it into what you do. And the final thing I said I was going to mention: be very strategic about your wealth. And what I would say is that don't leave your wealth in only in cash form. That would be the poorest decision you will ever make. And don't put your confidence in platforms either, because with the strength of politics, platforms can be destroyed. So make sure that you have your money in strategic places. So I'll say this. For those who are the seven bulbs, I mentioned the 4-3 creation points. If you have 7 points, so this is just being empirical, if you have 7 points of assets or financial investments, make sure that four of them are actually out of reach to you, and three of them are within your reach. By that, it means that the things that create um, quick control or something you can easily liquidate have it in a factor of three, and the ones that are more future for the future make it a factor of four. I'm trying to see. Maybe sometime I will talk more about the 4 by 3 ratio thing, but this is not the time. This is just to help you to understand that you have to make certain financial decisions and be very intentional about it. And I'll say this to you: many of the times you cannot make financial decisions by yourself, because that's the first law of Newton. Very important. It says that a body will perpetually remain at rest or in uniform motion, except an external force interrupts it. Many people need that interruption of that external force. And that is one of the things that will give you discipline, clarity, and sustainability. So I'm just putting that out there so that don't think you can do all of this by yourself. Partnership, collaboration, relationships, always leverage on these things to gain the knowledge you need to gain so that it can actually take you higher. All right, so this is where I'm going to be ending this session on financial decisions. I actually tried recording this and see if I can put this somewhere online, but let's see how that goes. All right. So yes, thank you all for those who are here, and please do not just take this as information. Take it as something you need to take actions on, and the more actions you take, the better things will be for you, I believe. All right. So yeah. So let us have the rest of the weekend, great weekend, and God bless. So we're going to see on the other side, and I really do hope that fortune begins to smile on us based on the intentionality of the quality of the decisions that we make. Have a good night and enjoy the great rest of the year. Yeah, ciao.